There are many factions and powers in the Star Trek universe, and not all of them are as open as the Federation in sharing information on their species. Even the Romulans, with all their closed borders and secrecy, have made themselves targets of the Federation intelligence and engaged in diplomatic relations several times throughout history. However, one scaly species has scant intelligence to scan, as it's secluded and aggressively territorial. Not even their origin is known for certain. The Gorn. Hi there, Rick here again with the next Cultural Index, returning as always to the Star Trek universe. And an iconic race, all due to the only prime timeline appearance that they have had in the original series. A Gorn also appeared in a single Enterprise episode, but this was set in the Mirror universe, so canonically we don't know much about them. Therefore, great segments of this index will contain memory beta content to help construct an image of a race that otherwise is shrouded in obscurity. The first official contact with the Gorn came in 2267 when they attacked the Federation colony world of Cestus III, purging all the inhabitants from the planet's surface, as the Gorn claim it was in their space. As with the Ferengi, the Federation had been aware of the Gorn's existence for some time through second-hand information and the like, but had never encountered them in an official capacity, nor knew where they resided.
What do we have on this general area?
Virtually nothing, Captain. No records of any explorations.
Until the Cestus III incident, which many term a massacre. Undoubtedly a brutal event, Cestus III was indeed in Gorn space, a fact unknown to the Federation, which has a habit of recklessly expanding into unexplored territory. After the massacre, relations between the Gorn and the Federation were tense for several years, but no offensive was ever conducted on either side. 2269 marked an end to the standoffish Federation-Gorn rivalries, with the two powers eventually deciding to respect each other's territory. It's worth noting that Cestus III was a Federation colony again by 2371, so it's possible that the Gorn allowed the UFP to settle the world in reparation for the massacre. A very diplomatic gesture, if true. In 2282, a Federation shuttle crashed on a Gorn training planet. The Gorn actually sent a rescue party to help the survivors, which was then shot in fear. The issue was resolved with no further fatalities, and the officers returned to the Federation. This shows that despite initial meetings as rivals, neither government wanted conflict. By 2370, the Federation and the Gorn relations were peaceful, if not productive. However, during the Dominion War, they apparently signed a non-aggression pact with the Dominion. In 2374, a political upheaval saw the Black Crest faction take a more militant approach to the Federation, and some hostilities ensued. Despite this, they eventually fought alongside the Federation in the final days of the Dominion War, thanks to a diplomatic mission from the Enterprise E. By 2379, diplomatic relations were expected to resume as before, though some sources say that rising Klingon interests in Gorn space is a prelude to a takeover from the Empire. The Gorn's homeworld is an unknown. Most sources say that it's a great jungle planet known as Gornar to the Federation, or Agornu, located in the Tau Licurae system of the Beta Quadrant. The Gorn call it Sasagaron, though there is a different legend to their origin which we'll address in a minute. The jungle world has a humid, muggy atmosphere and great swamps that spread for miles before giving way to ocean. For easier navigation and perhaps the preservation of the landscape, or the avoidance of the large, dinosaur-like creatures that roam the surface, most travel was conducted by a network of caves and underground tunnels. Gornar's gravity is 1.4 Gs, explaining why they have naturally higher musculature and very slow movements by galactic averages. So the number of different names and conflicting reports about the origin of the Gorn is further muddied with rumours that they are actually of extragalactic origin. There is a story that they originally arrived in the Beta Quadrant through a wormhole from another galaxy. This is unlikely, unless it happened thousands of years ago, but I cannot exactly prove otherwise, so I thought I'd mention it here. This data comes from the Kelvin timeline, interestingly enough, however. It could tie into an older story that said the Gorn developed on 3 planets in the same system, Gdar 1, 2 and 3. However, after the invention of interplanetary travel, it was discovered that none of these worlds were the origin of the species, and they came from elsewhere, so perhaps they really are extragalactic in origin. Or these could simply be colony worlds in Gorn space. After all, the Gorn were sending out colony ships before the invention of warp drive in their culture, so perhaps a few worlds splintered off. Frustratingly, we just don't know for certain. Biologically, the Gorn are reptilian. Cold-blooded, they would likely require a hot environment to function on their ships. They had a near-humanoid skeletal structure with a very high muscle mass. They had red, iron-based blood and a tough leather hide that was covered in scales. Much slower but vastly stronger than humans, they could even survive in a vacuum for a time. Predatory in nature, they had sharp fangs, reptilian eyes and talons for rending flesh, giving them a fearsome visage. One which most humans reacted unfavourably to. They can and will bite in combat, and have even eaten other sentient species before. Most species cannot understand their speech, a series of hisses and guttural noises, so they utilise universal translators. Gorn males are around 215 kilograms and 2 meters tall. The females are bigger. Despite this, it seems only the males serve in the military, suggesting perhaps that the females make up less of the population, or that a caste-based system prevents them from serving. The government of the Gorn is called the Hegemony, and at its head the Imperator, though there are also many references to political power residing with a king. Perhaps these roles are one and the same, King of the Gorn and Imperator of the military, in the same way a monarch or a president is the commander-in-chief. It appears that they operate in a caste-based system, with a distinct warrior, technology and civilian roles. This same source describes the castes as based on the conditions in which a Gorn is hatched, with incubation variations causing genetic divergence among the species, some being born bigger, good for combat, whilst some have more digits, favourable for more complicated tasks. Ones born with a bluish-yellow scale coloration are considered special and blessed. The space arm of the Gorn is simply the Space Command, and operates ships with the prefix GCS, such as the Gressril. The technology of the Gorn rivalled that of the Federation during the 23rd century, though it was likely outpaced by the neighbouring power by the 24th. They utilised genetic engineering and biological developments to a greater extent than most species, even for military application. Their ships followed a similar design principles to the Federation vessels, suspending 2 or more warp nacelles from pylons attached to a central hull. The bridge sat atop the primary hull, and their vessel's firepower could match that of a Constitution class, with even more powerful shields. They favoured disruptor technology, and their ships were just as fast as Starfleet vessels, with similar limitations. They dressed to discern rank and position over necessity, as their scales are protective of the elements, though it would be prudent for them to develop some sort of heated undergarment, seeing as they're, cold-blooded. They do wear harnesses and leather-like gear, likely non-replicated, as due to their predatory nature, animal skins would not exactly be in short supply. Although they shape metals for armour, they have very little jewellery. It has been said that the Gorn captain that fought Kirk on Cestus III was wearing a tactical eyewear, a sort of heads-up display, but I find it unlikely that the Metrons would negate to strip this bit of technology when they removed everything else. So I'm putting this down to another example of bioengineering. They also have produced a concoction called Meridor, a blue drink that shows us that they do at least have a functioning agricultural arm, and therefore there's less chance that they rely on plunder and piracy. They appear quite primitive to most species' preconceptions, but really aren't. Although they favoured overpowering a foe outright, they utilised subterfuge and trickery to engineer species into situations where the Gorn's natural advantages came into play. They have names like Slathis, Sla, Sisli, Zagozun, Stas, Thrak, and Kastar. These pronunciations are as close to their names as most species can manage, as they have an entirely different vocal structures. Sla was from the Mirror Universe, however, and was a slave master hired by the Tholians. This suggests that they may utilise their threatening visage and physical superiority for security or enforcement roles. They bury the dead and consider grave sites to be protected, perhaps even sacred. Some form of ancestor worship, perhaps? But they are said to believe in the mistress of fertility, Siyahaza, who watched over the eggs and hatchlings while keeping an eye out for the Great Father, who was banished to the depths of space for attempting to consume the young. Bloody hell, these words. Usikasir was a concept of destiny, a philosophy that would go hand in hand with their adherence to a caste-structured society. Although official sources list them as xenophobic, a deeper look into their culture, or suspected culture anyway, gives me the impression that they are sort of more incredibly territorial and simply assume hostile intent on any unknown interlopers. Once the Federation and its motivations were known to the Gorn, they were never really a problem again, adopting diplomacy where appropriate to preserve their way of life, which is more than can be said for many other races. Don't get me wrong, they are predatory by nature and highly dangerous, but they show a willingness to overcome their instincts and can see the larger picture. Antagonising every other race out there is going to be a bad move. After all, they are a relatively small territory. However, it's likely that as their technology is surpassed by other races, they may find themselves the target of others or dragged into conflicts they would rather avoid, especially if their assiduous defence triggers an incident. Thanks for listening to this index. As mentioned, a lot of this is beta content, but outside of the Arena episode, we literally know nothing else prime timeline about them, which is a shame as I really like some of the concepts presented here, like their homeworld and their ship designs. What about you? Do you mind the amount of info here from non-canon sources? And of course, as usual, the index moves to a new target culture next, with either the Fallout universe's inhabitants who would save us from ourselves, the Brotherhood of Steel, or the survivors of the Battlestar universe, the Colonial Fleet. So until then, I'll see you in the next video. Thanks again for watching, and goodbye.